Theo Gremminger, my one criticism of the fantasy football content you do is it's way too positive. You see only the upside and all the good things about these rookies. So I'm going to force you today to nitpick and find the downside, the red flags on all of these rookies. And if you go positive, I'm going to turn off your microphone.
Okay, you got it. I think it's not so much a positivity. It's range of outcomes and trying to find like the upside case for guys. And I think, some cynical people like yourself, it bothers, but most people enjoy that, Alan, where you can kind of see a situation where maybe the fantasy community is poking holes on a player saying this can't work out. And you'll say, but what if this changes usage wise or situation wise? So it's keeping an open mind. It's a glass half full approach rather than a everybody's good approach.
Okay, that's fair. But would you admit that you tend to be even a little more optimistic than most on rookies? Just from your
I'm a huge ageist. I like to embrace youth, and it's been a good thing for me the last few years because we've been able to hit on a lot of guys. Last year, I told people Malik Neighbors would be a wide receiver 1. I also said Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a wide receiver 1, but gave you Malik Neighbors wide receiver 1. We were drafting the hell out of him. We had Brock Bowers as the tight end 1 overall in Dynasty before we played it down. So had a number of hits here with attacking the rookies. It works until it doesn't kind of deal. But this year it's another exciting class. So happy to talk about the downside risk for all of them, Alan. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want, man. One of my favorite people in the industry. We actually talk on the phone. So like, Alan, this is a fun one today.
Yeah. All right. So I'm not going to expect you to make up some crazy story about Ashton Jeanty because he does seem as bulletproof as Zeke Elliott was when he came into the league with that similar draft capital. So, I mean, let's just do this one quickly. What is the case where Ashton Jeanty finishes as like RB14 and disappoints in fantasy football?
He gets injured. I think him finishing
him
finishing as RB14 with the amount of volume that he's going to handle would mean that the Vegas Raiders offense just doesn't work this year, that the Geno Smith acquisition is not the right one, and they put all their eggs in one basket with Geno. It doesn't mesh with Chip Kelly, and it results in Ashton Jeanty not getting enough goal line opportunities. Maybe he scores fewer touchdowns than we're projecting. And also, I think one thing we're sort of taking for granted is that the Raiders are going to use him predominantly on passing downs as well, and they're going to sort of phase out the other backs. I think the only downside risk would be as if they work in another back for
Raheem Mostert.
But I can't make Ashton Jeanty negative ones. I think Ashton Jeanty actually now, Alan, because of the rise of Christian McCaffrey and now because of the enthusiasm for Devon Achane, who's moved up a little bit since Jonnu was traded, you're actually getting this crazy discount on Ashton Jeanty. I had an FFPC main event, and I was able to get Ashton Jeanty at the 202. So it's a player that we were comparing to Saquon Barkley, comparing to Zeke Elliott in terms of his rookie year production potential. And now you're getting him as like Najee Harris rookie season prices. So like Ashton Jeanty's almost too big to fail besides having an injury. And he's also one of the best bets to lead the NFL in running back touches. I mean, he'll be up there with like Saquon and Derrick Henry in terms of touches.
So shout out. We got a shout out from Shane Manila.
Shane Manila is my guest this week on Dynasty Life. The show probably drops next week, but recording with Shane this week. So
yeah, well, here's my red flag for Shane. He's looking at us on Facebook. What the hell is he doing on Facebook?
Yeah, Shane, what the hell are you doing? He's on Facebook Marketplace selling some stuff.
Okay,
that's my guess.
Right. Well, that's my rookie red flag for Shane Manila. All right. Yeah. My case for Ashton Jeanty is that I was going to say that he ends up being more Nick Chubb than he is, and he has like 16 receptions, right? Like, which is not going to happen. But if they just don't use him in the passing game and he has 9 touchdowns and 1,300 yards, great season, but probably make more, but like RB11. That would be the downside case, which you and I both don't think is going to happen. Let's move on. Omari Hampton. Okay. First round draft capital. I mean, amazing, right? I think this the red flag for me, Theo, would be this Najee Harris thing is more of a ceiling capper, especially in the first half of the season.
100%. It's the Najee Harris being there and the willingness for the coaching staff to use Omari and Hampton right away in like a predominant high volume role. There's, I'll say that I'm still in on Hampton. I think Hampton, who's now adjusted, where you're starting to see him in the 5th round of drafts instead of the 4th round,
that feels better.
Much better. It feels a lot less risky. I think that the way that the kind of the train left the station after the NFL draft, you were going to have to draft Omari and Hampton at like the 3-4 turn. Now you're getting him inside of the round 5. So a lot of your risk is sort of mitigated at that price tag where it's nothing but upside in that range. But yeah, I think it's a Najee Harris stays healthy. Najee Harris, there's some veteran deference. Harbaugh has the connection to Harris, tried to recruit him to come to Michigan. He, of course, goes to Alabama. Greg Roman has said the right things about Harris. They've also said the right things about Omari and Hampton. But I think if it becomes a little bit more of a 50-50 split, it's also they're also going to be using Ladd McConkey. I think Ladd McConkey is a very safe bet to have the most targets that we've ever seen in a Greg Roman-led offense, which isn't like a crazy high bar to cross.
What's the number?
I got to pull the exact one up.
I mean,
I would say,
is it like 140? Is probably
I would say 140. Hollywood Brown had a year. Mark Andrews had a really big year. I would say that it's if he hits 150, it's safe. We don't even need to get on the old Google machine.
Right.
We can just go with it. So I think if they're a little more pass happy than they were in years past, just based on the talent there, because they've put a lot of draft capital into the receivers. Quinton Johnston, 1st round pick, Ladd McConkey, 2nd round pick, Trey Harris, 2nd round pick. I don't think that's what they want to do, but it could just be that those guys are very good and McConkey becomes the best player they have on offense. So there's a couple of red flags here for Hampton. At the end of the day, I think if you draft Hampton, you can't draft him as your RB1. You most likely want to draft him as your RB2. And then that way you can sort of like survive the first month of the season. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of time for him to at least be the 60 and a 60-40. And I think down the stretch, he could be a guy that's putting up 15 to 18 points in the fantasy football playoffs. I think he's really, really good and a high volume bet. Najee coaches like him though. He plays hurt. He never misses time, Alan. Never misses time.
Yep. I don't think he's ever missed an NFL game, right?
No. And he runs for 1,000 yards every single year. He was also a 1st round pick. And a lot of these guys where they have that high draft capital, the coaches remember evaluating him in the process. And they're like, this is a guy I would have done a couple things differently with. We loved him as a prospect. Now we've got him. So, a couple little red flags with Omari and Hampton. But again, the price has adjusted.
He does. Najee Harris does just enough to keep his backfield mate out of the elite status. And I think that the downside case would be Hampton gets there with 50 catches, gets there with, 1,200 yards, but has like 3 touchdowns because Najee is like, low yardage, high touchdown. I think that's also a possibility when you talk about range of outcomes, red flags. Travis Hunter. Okay. I'm going to state the obvious here. And if you want to expound on it, is that he ends up, having stretches of games where he only plays like 17 offensive snaps. And I'm not saying that's going to be the season long, but if he has a 2 or 3 game stretch where they need him on defense, that seems like an obvious red flag.
Yeah, I think that it's the only player that we're going to talk about today where defensive injuries are going to potentially have an impact on him.
That's
where like going into the season, if everybody stays healthy, then it's a situation where I think he's going to
explain that. Go back to why defensive injuries would play a role for him, because usually defensive injuries are good for the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the Jaguar, if it was, we always went back to like where he could have ended up when we were talking about teams that were potentially drafted him, where like the Cleveland Browns had some quality at defensive back. We really like the fact that he probably wouldn't get pressed into that role. But like Jerrion Jones, Tyson Campbell, some of these cornerbacks for Jacksonville, if one of them goes down with like a season-ending injury, do they feel the pressure to have to play Travis Hunter a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball just out of necessity? They could run their offense a little bit more through Brian Thomas. It's just an annoying back-of-your-mind type argument. I think with Travis Hunter, there's a chance that he really, really hits. And I think offensively, there's a range of outcomes where he's a double-digit touchdown scorer, where he just, a lot of spike weeks, teams paying attention to Brian Thomas, trying to take him away, and Hunter puts up a bunch of big weeks. I just think that it's the only, if there's the defensive back injuries, and things happen in the NFL. If they lose a key cornerback starter, does Travis Hunter have to play 25% more of the time on defense? Does that hurt his chances of scoring on offense? Do they try to limit his workload a little bit on offense to allow him to play defense? Those sort of things go through my head. I still think we're Travis Hunter, when you're talking about a top 5 draft pick wide receiver that's available to you in the 6th round, with that sort of talent and that sort of production he had in college as a receiver, it's still it's an easy click, as they say. But there always is in the back of your mind, it's the versatility and the ability to play both sides of the ball could be a detriment for fantasy football if there's carnage in that cornerback room.
Yeah, who do you rather have in Dynasty, McMillan or Travis Hunter in a like a long-term keeper Dynasty league?
I've been a Tet McMillan guy. I have them both like back to back in my rookie rankings, and I have exposure to both of them. But I think Tet McMillan has a chance to be a 150 target guy year in, year out. Yeah. And in terms of target competition, he doesn't have a Brian Thomas Jr. playing next to him. So I get it. Travis Hunter, like for a lot of people who had like rookie models, like a lot of the people, you know, looking at analytics like Travis Hunter a little more. Also the fact that he's just unbelievable on film. But for me, Tet McMillan has that kind of Drake London type outcome where the floor is going to be really safe. And it's a combination of elite size, elite draft capital, and I think elite volume on offense. Tet McMillan's in a really, really good spot to just become the wide receiver 1 and stay there for a number of years.
I mean, this, I guess, goes for almost any player, but I'm a little worried, and I'm bullish on Trevor Lawrence this year. I have him as like on my QB 10 or 11, I think, in redraft. But I think that any injury to him or, you know, stalling of performance really affects Hunter. But you could say that about, I guess, about any starting quarterback. There's very few that have high-level backups, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And also, I mean, Tet McMillan, like we had the really strong sample size for Bryce Young in the second half of the year. I'm in on Bryce Young. I think he's going to have a good season, but there's always the chance that defenses adjust and he doesn't have the sort of success that he had over the second half of last year. And we're back to square one of having quarterback issues in Carolina. So I don't think that'll happen. I think there's some safety with Tet McMillan, but
he's our next guy. Tet's our next guy. And, you know, I mean, see what happens when I just let you go, Theo, you start talking about positive things with Tet McMillan. What's the downside case? What's the red flag that sticks out with you with Tet?
Well, the downside risk is the offense is just not that good. And Bryce Young sort of regresses from what we saw in the second half of last season. Tet McMillan is a little bit more of a 110 target player than a 140 target player. And I think the targets and the volume are going to matter for Tet McMillan. I think that he's it's not, we wouldn't call him an opportunistic wide receiver 1. I think he is a wide receiver 1 profile prospect, but a lot of the best case scenarios for him are that he thrives on volume this year. He also can make really big plays. He's got great chance of winning a lot of 50-50 balls, great catch radius guy, super athletic. Not like super athletic, like we call like a 4.3 speed guy, but super agile, able to adjust on the ball. Like all those things pop on film. Had a couple of huge spike weeks at Arizona. I think that the quarterback production in Carolina, that's a threat to his production year 1. The other scenario would be Xavier Legette takes a big step forward. Adam Thielen remains involved in the offense. Jatavian Sanders becomes a 85, 90 target player. And you all of a sudden have a number of receiving options, and Carolina's offense has more mouths to feed in the passing game. A lot of those scenarios could sort of happen. It's not necessarily something I would bet on with Tet. I'm in on Tet. I really like his price in redraft, but there's quarterback potential issues, target competition potential issues, and we know that the running backs are going to get the ball because back-to-back seasons, Dave Canales offenses have produced, you know, running backs who were 300. Chuba Hubbard was a little south of 300, but around 300 or more touches. Rachaad White was like 330 or something the year before. So yeah, those are sort of the potential red flags with Tet.
Yeah, no, those all make sense. I'm I'm interested to see the Tet versus, Travis Hunter. That's going to, there's no real wrong answer. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I just want to see how that all plays out. I just want to remind everyone right now, you can get 15% off any RotoWire subscription for the fantasy football draft season. Just go to rotowire.com, use code YouTube15. Redesigned website. You mentioned it earlier. It looks great. But on top of that, we have our draft planner, mock draft tool. So go over there right now, get set up for draft season, rotowire.com. Use code YouTube15, 15% off. I'm here with Theo Gremminger, Alan Seslowsky, and we are talking rookie red flags. Theo, after we get through the next couple, I'm curious what you have going on over at Fantasy Points, but let's give the people a little more content. Let's ruin their lives because they love these rookies. I know you do too, but TreVeyon Henderson going a little earlier than I thought he would. And I mean, already in like Dynasty rankings, he's like in the top 6 or 7 running backs. What's the downside? What's the red flag that you could see for Henderson?
Well, I think a lot of people would jump out and say offensive line issues in New England. I'll say that I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit better. They draft Will Campbell. They have Jared Wilson at center. And it's just I think that there's going to be sort of rational coaching there with Josh McDaniels, Mike Vrabel. These guys have had success in New England. I think we'll see that there. For me, I think the red flag with TreVeyon Henderson is Ramondre Stevenson's usage.
Yes.
People are sort of writing off Stevenson. And I think Stevenson could maintain a role as a runner in the offense, and that would be fine for Henderson. It's really, is Ramondre Stevenson utilized in the passing game? Are the targets for Stevenson and Henderson somewhere closer to 50-50, or do they just utilize their top 40 draft pick with who's dynamic with the ball in his hands? Like, I think what I would do is get TreVeyon Henderson the ball as much as possible in space. He would be highly targeted. TreVeyon Henderson, for me, would be a 70 target or more player in year one. But does he fail to hit that level of receiving production? And a lot of times the backs that we want to catch a lot of balls as rookies don't. Even a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who we were all over as a pass catcher coming out. Of course, he was a first-round pick. Like, during the process, we were comparing him to Kamara. We were comparing him to Reggie Bush as a pass catcher.
I remember that.
And I felt so good about that one. He's had 52 receptions in back-to-back seasons. Henderson's going to need to hit a little bit north of that to really, really hit. I'll say Devon Achane, the willingness to use him as a pass catcher out of the backfield, we saw that more so in year 2. So a lot of times it could just be a little bit of a veteran's deference. Use Ramondre. Ramondre's a fine pass blocker, and Ramondre just siphons off about 40 catches this year. And if Ramondre has like a 35, 40 catch season, then I think that limits the ceiling of TreVeyon Henderson.
I want to go off topic for a half second here. I was listening to Evan Silva's podcast the other day, and he said that he thought that, because you mentioned Achane a couple times, he said that he would think that Devon Achane, and if I'm misquoting slightly, it's fine, that he is a defensible 101 in redraft. I thought that was, again, I'm not going to tell someone that wrong.
I'm all over Achane.
Yeah. I mean, 101 though, 101.
I mean, here's the scenario for Achane. Achane catches 100 passes.
All right.
Achane was over 22 points a game in games where Tua started last year.
Yards per carry in the rookie year. Remember that?
And that's the one thing is, our offensive line rankings have Miami low, so this is more of a vibes based take, and people hate this take. But Miami drafted a guard in round 2. Miami signed Daniels, the free agent guard. At least with like the beat reporters, there's some positivity about the interior of the offensive line there and how it could get a little better. Now, of course, they lose Teron Armstead at tackle. Massive, massive loss for them. But there's been some reporting that you could see Devon Achane used a little bit more as an inside runner to get him back to that higher yards per carry. He wasn't bad last year. Like, he was still north of 4, but there was like 7.8 as a rookie. So if you talk about Devon Achane leading all running backs in receptions again. Achane rushing for well over 1,000 yards this year, which is a big goal of his. And we see him start ripping off a few more home run plays. Like, Achane could average 22, 23 points per game. He does that. That's
first round
101.
Pick?
Yeah, that's 101. So, I mean,
I'm saying, would you take him in the first round no matter what? Like, would you take him ahead of Derrick Henry?
Yes, I'm taking Achane ahead of Derrick Henry, but I still think Henry's fine. I took Henry at like the 19th overall pick in an FFPC league the other day. I thought
FFPC, yeah.
that
Because
was
I would
great.
take him. I would take him in the first round, Henry. That's why I asked. I would take him
I
at
think
pick
they're
10.
I think they're like, and just not to get fully off topic, but
Yeah.
I think Henry and Achane in round 2, those guys being available there really kind of opens you up to drafting a wide receiver or drafting a Brock Bowers if you're in tight end premium, and then getting your anchor RB inside round 2. And you sort of have the fail-safe high volume play with Jonathan Taylor, who you know you're going to get from pick like 22 to 24. I don't like Taylor that much as I do the other two, but Taylor is going to get a ton of carries this year. So there's running back availability in round 2 that sort of opens you up to wide receivers in round 1. And for that matter, Ashton Jeanty occasionally falls to like somewhere in that 201 to 204 range these days.
All right, continuing on with Theo Gremminger of Fantasy Points, we are talking rookie red flags. In our Superflex leagues, Cam Ward, I mean, rookie 101s, it's rare that they come out and smash. CJ Stroud had that really good year a couple years ago. Even Justin Herbert's rookie year was decent, right? Pretty solid. Or was that the year he got stabbed? No, that was Tyrod Taylor that got stabbed by his doctor, right? So, I mean, I think the downside here, the red flag, is you could have a Caleb Williams type season where you see the signs that he's going to be good for fantasy football, but game to game, there's like, some serious inconsistency. What do you see as a red flag for Cam Ward?
Well, I think that the quality of the weapons around him are not great. And there's some internal optimism that they're going to sort of punch over their weight class, but ESPN rated skill position players for each team, and they had Tennessee like towards the very, very bottom. I think that was a Bill Barnwell article. I think that really was a reflection of the lack of wide receivers outside of Calvin Ridley. Running back, both those guys can catch passes. I think that the downside risk with Cam Ward is the Brian Callahan offense just doesn't work for another year. And he gives you sort of low-end QB2, maybe high-end QB3 numbers. There's also, with Cam Ward, we'd like to see him have the opportunity to run a little bit. And people have talked about how he has escapability in the pocket more so than a ton of rushing production. But if he can give us a little bit of rushing production just based on being an opportunistic scrambler, that could help him in fantasy football. But if that doesn't exist, that also kind of lowers the ceiling outcome. I think Cam Ward at quarterback 26, where he settled in, is fine. Like, again, it's a super low risk, and you're drafting him in a range that if it doesn't work out, you're sending him right back to the waiver wire.
So by the way, here's the crazy part. Like QB 26 in redraft. In Dynasty, dude, he's like QB 12 or 13 or 14 in that range.
But in Dynasty, it's a different bet because the situation, you got the insulation of being the first overall pick. You also have the players around him are going to improve. Like, I get the Dynasty enthusiasm with Cam Ward. Cam Ward's also just a maniac in a really good way. They say the guy shows up to the facility at like
16.
5 in the morning. 5 in the morning shows up, and then they're having to drag him out at night. This guy, like, it's the one of the most boring players off the field because all Cam Ward does is football. And like, those kind of guys in sports you really want to bet on. It's like the singular focus type guys. Like, you're never, what did Cam Ward do for his vacation this offseason? There's no pictures of him showing up somewhere interesting because he's in the facility working. So I like Cam Ward. I think that it's a player you really, really want to root for him to go from incarnate Word to Washington State, then end up at Miami, and then end up being the number 1 overall pick. The guy's sort of an astronaut in terms of how he's risen up in like the football world. Yeah. So like, I wouldn't necessarily bet against him. Does Tennessee have enough juice this year for him to produce? And is this offensive ecosystem the right one for him to produce? And is Brian Callahan a decent coach? Like, we don't know, because a lot of Brian Callahan year one, we get we're giving him the benefit of the doubt because of the Will Levis experiment. But Callahan was also like in Cincinnati and had elite talent. I think, Alan, you could be the offensive coordinator for Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and at the time Joe Mixon, and probably put up some points. So
Yeah.
we'll see if Callahan's real.
Yeah, you could have like a Drake May type season, which isn't bad, right? Everyone's optimistic about Drake May this year, but it's just like the system around him, not great. You see flashes, but there's just not enough muscle around him with talent, with ecosystem, environment, whatever you want to call it, and that causes his ADP or his final ranking to be lower. Yeah, you saw that video from like a few from the spring where him and where Cam Ward and Shedeur were talking about.
Yeah.
Shedeur was trying to get him to do, either TikTok or some, and he was like, dude, I'm all football. Yeah, no, that kind of highlights exactly what you're saying here. So I do like that. We're going to take a very short break right here, but when we come back for the podcast audience, we're going to speak about the rest of the rookies in the top 12. Plus, we're going to talk about Shedeur Sanders, who, there's some obvious red flags, but I think there's upside as well. Be right back in 5 seconds. All right, reset right here. I'm Alan Seslowsky, RotoWire.com, along with Theo Gremminger, FantasyPoints.com. Theo, I want to hear about everything that you have going on that you want us to check out at FantasyPoints.com, but we're going to make people wait for that. We're going to make people wait to hear your shameless plugs, which I love. I read all your stuff. You're my favorite follow on social media. But first, let's just skip all the way to Shedeur Sanders. What's the red flag with Shedeur Sanders? This is too easy, right? Too easy.
It's a poor bet to make on a quarterback drafted that late. Lower drafted quarterbacks have much lower hit rates. There's also not just this like internal steam from like the beat reporters or coach speak, basically insinuating that it's his job to lose or something like that. It's like, wow, we drafted this guy on day 3, but he's still got a chance to be our starter. We stole one. Like, that's not really out there right now. So Shedeur Sanders is sort of a bad historical bet to make. Now, he's probably on one of the only teams where he'd have an opportunity to start right away. I mean, New Orleans,
Indianapolis, he would have a chance.
Like throw Indy, like any of the team with unsettled bad quarterback situations.
Yeah.
I don't know about Indianapolis.
You don't think he'd have a chance?
He'd have a chance, but I think that the Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones combination is more inspiring than the Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel conversation that we're having. So
if he was the backup on the Jets and Fields went into, started poorly, he would have a chance there.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I would give you that one. I think they like Justin Fields right now.
Oh, dude, I'm a Jet fan. I've wanted them to draft Fields, not Zach Wilson. I don't want to go too hard off the road here, but I think, in my redraft rankings, where do you have Fields in your redraft rankings? I'm just curious about.
I think quarterback 9 or 10, but
I'm
think
at 6.
Yeah,
I think 6.
Yeah, so, I think somewhere in that range is a good one. I've drafted Fields.
It's great. You don't have to take him there. It's so
Fields
great.
has the potential to have more rushing yards this year than Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels, and you're getting him in and that's also the thing. When we say quarterback 10, people say, whoa, that's a high pick. It's not, though, because after QB5. There's a huge tier break until QB6. I do think Fields is going to move up a little bit because I think that the Baker is going to move down a little bit because of the Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah.
Baker being QB7 is weird anyway.
Well, because he had 40 touchdowns last year, and that ecosystem was so. I hate that word.
I love that's why I said it.
That word.
I know you hate some of these words, so that's why I said.
If you say ecosystem, I'm going to keep saying
asshole,
ecosystem. Right?
Yeah.
Just kidding. I
said it for you. I said it for you.
That is a word that the fantasy football podcasters use. I recognize that. It's just one of those that gives me the douche chills. That's all.
Positive touchdown regression. You like that one?
Positive, negative, sideways regression. I don't know. We need to do make a list. That's a good tweet, right? Like fantasy football dictionary.
Alan's like language pet peeves.
It's not mine.
There you go.
Oh my God. Under the hood metrics.
There you go.
Yeah. Quinshon Judkins. Is the obvious that he's like in like a mega timeshare here and just doesn't catch passes? What is it?
Yeah, I think that the argument for Quinshon Judkins is they work in Dylan Sampson as a runner and Jerome Ford still exists as a pass catcher. And it's just annoying enough that he doesn't deliver. Also, we have questions at the quarterback position. Does Quinshon Judkins end up rushing for enough touchdowns to sort of justify it? Judkins, we loved as a prospect. Like, I know Brett Whitefield over at Fantasy Points and I were very high on. Some of the analytics people didn't necessarily love Judkins as much as we did. I know Scott Barrett had big reservations about Judkins as a prospect, but he went ahead of TreVeyon Henderson, top 40 draft capital. On paper, it looks like a guy who's going to get a lot of volume. But that Dylan Sampson draft pick, I think they've got some plans for Sampson. They've talked about using Sampson in different ways, getting him in the slot.
Yeah.
But Sampson was really good at Tennessee last year, and they used that 4th-round pick on him after they took Judkins in round 2. Now, is that just because he was the highest-ranked player on their board? They see him as a chance to get incredible depth? Not sure. I think that it could end up being they're trying to emulate the model that they had with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt that was very successful for them. And Cleveland was like bottom 2 in rushing touchdowns last year as a team. So they really want to get a couple of these guys in the mix. But I think the argument against Judkins is it's a bad offense and multiple other backs are worked in, capping the upside for him, capping the massive volume outcome for him just enough that he ends up being like a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 kind of purgatory pick rather than a guy who can get drafted as a low-end RB2 and be like the RB15 and really help you out.
Yeah, and by the way, you were right about one thing, that you do look better with the ear-in headphones versus the over-the-head cups. You do look better this way.
It takes like 5 years off of you when you go with the tiny headphones.
Yeah.
So,
see, I'm not sure. Like I'll push my headphones down right here. I think I'm not sure I look better. Do I look better like this? Like physically, do I look hotter?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say hotter. I would say better for the record. But
all right, well, maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll do that because it's very important that I look good on camera.
Show off the top of your ears. I mean,
everything.
Good look
everything.
for you. Yeah.
It's a very handsome man I am. Emeka Egbuka. I mean, it seems like there's good vibes, good beat reports coming out about Egbuka. You know what? This is a player first. Give me like 20 seconds on the upside here, but then I really want you to tell me what the red flags are because I've taken Egbuka at like 108 over RJ Harvey that was projected to have an immediate role, whereas Egbuka may not. So one positive, 2 negatives.
I made a statement on a pod like 2 or 3 weeks ago that I think by the end of the season, or I don't think I said end of the season. Let's say like the second half of the year, Emeka Egbuka will be with Tet McMillan and Travis Hunter as top 15 dynasty wide receivers.
Every year, Theo, there's like a guy that goes at like the 109 in our drafts that ends up being like, why didn't I take him at 104.3,
Yeah, Egbuka, like when we talk about the positivity from the players, also the positivity from the beat reporters, I'll give a shout out. I don't know the guys who run it, but there's the Pewter Report, which is the really well-run Tampa Bay Bucks coverage. I don't know who's the main guy there, but I read it. And last offseason, they were all over Bucky Irving. They talked about how Bucky Irving's going to make an impact on this offense. A lot of the positive quotes coming out of Tampa Bay about Bucky Irving were attributed to the Pewter Report. They also talked about Jalen McMillan. We saw him in the second half of the year. They've written extensively about Emeka Egbuka, and some of the quotes are really interesting. You had Baker Mayfield talking about how he's extremely versatile and he can play every single spot on offense, which is interesting because I think a lot of people in the buildup really pigeonholed him as just a power slot. We need him to be the slot receiver. I think Tampa Bay views him as a little bit more versatile. There's also talk about his athleticism, his build. I think the quote from Baker that like gets people excited is he's got the body of a running back and he plays like Chris Godwin. He catches the ball like Chris Godwin. So like, I think a lot of people are kind of limiting the ceiling outcome for Egbuka. If what happened last year and we see attrition in the wide receiver room in Tampa Bay, Mike Evans missed time last year. Chris Godwin missed time last year. If one of those guys misses time this year, Egbuka is going to be like a skyrocket. The guy's going to be in every fantasy lineup. I think the downside for Egbuka is it's an extremely balanced offense where Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both healthy.
Right.
And Godwin,
that's the one. That's the one right there.
I think there's one other little tiny potential outcome is people are writing off Jalen McMillan, like leaving him off, like left for dead. Jalen McMillan.
He doesn't
Jalen
get
McMillan
drafted in best
doesn't
ball.
get drafted.
Yeah.
But Jalen McMillan played over 90% of the snaps in the playoff loss to the Washington Commanders. Jalen McMillan, if we go the last 6 games of the year last year, was like a fantasy top 15 wide receiver, put up a bunch of weeks where he was over 15 points scored, and he was a 3rd round pick last year. So if they become a little more balanced, and also we talk about touchdown regression, we talk about the touchdown rate that Baker Mayfield had last year, passed for over 40 touchdowns. If Baker goes from being a 40 touchdown guy to a 29 touchdown guy, then it hurts all of the receivers in Tampa Bay. And they also now will throw in Tristan Wirfs is going to miss maybe more than the first month of the season, which is maybe the best player on the Bucs, and some people think the best tackle in football. So Baker Mayfield's it's a big loss, and I think a lot of times we underestimate in the fantasy community the impact of elite offensive linemen. We saw what happened last year with San Francisco with the games where Trent Williams missed versus the games where he played, and sort of the splits with Brock Purdy, with Williams and without. We got a lot of moving parts here in Tampa Bay. So I'll say that's sort of the negative outcome for Egbuka. But I do think Egbuka, like, this is the kind of player you want, because there's some parallels to like the Garrett Wilson rookie year ADP, the Justin Jefferson rookie year ADP, where these guys just get buried, you know?
JSN. Yeah. Wasn't he like a 6th or 7th round pick?
JSN was going higher than Egbuka was.
That's what I said, 6th or 7th. Yeah. Or was it like more like 5th?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying JSN rookie year.
Somebody agrees with us in the chat about the Jalen McMillan. So
yeah,
I like that. I like the McMillan. I mean, McMillan, like objectively, like if you just watch the games, it's like, how can Jalen McMillan disappear? I think another thing from dynasty managers is Jalen McMillan did enough his rookie year that if Tampa Bay doesn't like put him back in a prominent role, someone's going to sign him based off that sample size, and he'll have another opportunity. Like, McMillan was really, really good last year.
Yeah, I just want to remind Theo, you're going to do a bunch of NFFC drafts, high stakes drafts this year, right?
I go to New York. I used to do the gauntlet in New York where I do 2 days there. This year, I think I'm just doing maybe 2 or 3 live in New York, and then I do some live ones in Vegas, and I'll hop on some online ones in August. NFFC and NFFPC, you'll find me in the high stakes streets, Alan.
Well, don't mention FFP.
I know I can't.
I'm about to do an NFFC commercial right now, and you're yapping about the damn competition.
I'm sorry. You'll edit that. Well, we're not live or anything, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
I just want to remind everyone, the NFFC, if you like high stakes fantasy football, our favorite contest was named after RotoWire. It's a RotoWire online championship. It cost $350 to win $250,000, and then there's also a league prize. I'm running 2 drafts, Theo. I'm trying out this matinee thing where I run lunchtime drafts. So
I might join you on one of those, Alan.
That would be great. Always love having you on there. We're going to live stream it. So, and I put the links in the video description here. So we're going to do a live draft. It costs $350 to get in. There's a link Wednesday, July 23rd. At 1 p.m., lunchtime draft Eastern time. And then we're going to do another one July 30th, a week later at Wednesday at 1 p.m. We're trying out this matinee draft. So if you want to play against me now, not only can you win the league prize of $1,500 or the overall of $250K, if you beat me, you get a free RotoWire subscription for a season. So, I mean, that alone right there is worth more than the $250,000, right?
I pay $250K just for that, Alan.
And then also we're sponsored by Circa Millions is back, Theo, where you have to pick 5 against the spread. They have millions of dollars in prizes. And then Circa Survivor, obviously pick one team every week, no spread. Once you use them, can't do it. You have to go to Circa Hotel in Las Vegas to sign up. But that's like my favorite contest. $21 million in guaranteed prizes over there. So go over, check out that. And then lastly, Fantrax, right? They have, I've actually moved a couple leagues over to Fantrax. I know that like right now everyone's on like the Sleeper or the MFL or, obviously Yahoo and ESPN are popular too, but Fantrax, man, I don't know if you've seen it lately. They really updated the site over there. You can go over there. They have Dynasty, redraft. So go to fantrax.com/RotoWire, sign up, and they will have some bonuses if you there's like a raffle to win a Jamar Chase jersey. So I've moved a couple leagues over there just because they were sponsored, but I'm seriously considering moving a few more over there. All right, we're back here with Theo Gremminger, fantasypoints.com. I'm Alan Seslowsky, and we're going over all of the red flags, things that are going to go wrong with these rookies or being aware of. RJ Harvey, he has dropped to RB 20 in Dynasty, the 11th rookie drafted in our rookie drafts. I saw him get high up there at 6, and they signed J.K. Dobbins, and that's that's a red flag, Theo?
Yeah, I think J.K. Dobbins was objectively good last year, Alan, and he played like 13 games. So I think that the fear for RJ Harvey is that Dobbins mixes in a ton. Dobbins and him are in some sort of a 50-50 timeshare, maybe 55-45 for Dobbins. And Harvey ends up not getting the volume to sort of justify his year one price tag. It's basically the Omari and Hampton argument. Yet again, is there's a veteran who's been successful that is brought in. It's a little different than the Najee Harris one because of the timing for Dobbins, where Dobbins was signed in June. Harris was was signed immediately in free agency. I don't know. For me, I really like Harvey at value. I also like Dobbins at value. I think this is an offense we want to bet on. We had our offensive line rankings over at Fantasy Points, written by a writer named Scott DiBenedetto. He was a former NFL scout. Really, really good article.
I like that.
And he had the Broncos as the second best offensive line in football this year.
Who's number one? Who's number one?
Number one was, I believe.
Oh, wait. Don't tell them. They have to go over to Fantasy Points and find out.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to say.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Go over and find out. It's a pretty obvious team at number one for offensive line.
I don't know who it is.
Well, there you go. It's not the Miami Dolphins, Alan.
Well, you said near the bottom. Yeah.
But basically, Denver, you have the offensive line. You've got Bo Nix, who's very accurate. Bo Nix also, when he was at Oregon, led the nation, was playing alongside Bucky Irving, who led the nation in running back receptions. And with Lombardi and Peyton, that offense has been top 5 in running back targets in back-to-back years, including a number 1 overall finish in 2023. So there's a lot of outs for both of these guys to hit at ADP. And if Harvey just absorbs the Javonte Williams usage as a receiver, then he's going to pay off because he's a lot better than Javonte Williams was last year. So I get it. I think that it's fear in the marketplace, but I think you should absolutely be drafting the hell out of the Denver Broncos running backs. And also, if one of the two guys goes down, usually historically that's been a J.K. Dobbins thing, then the other running back would run away with it. I don't think Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime would be like, if one of these two guys went down, I don't think it would be like Estime steps into the like-for-like Dobbins role. And I don't think if Harvey went down, Jaleel McLaughlin steps into the Harvey role exactly. I think both those guys would have way significantly lower volume, and the two main backs would actually take a huge uptick. So I get the RJ Harvey trepidation, but again, you're talking about round 5 for him when you were paying round 4 price tag before Dobbins was signed.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more worried about this backfield than you seem to be. And it's because when you have 2 running backs splitting, it's no problem anymore. But when there's 3, and I think McLaughlin's going to be a little bit more involved, not enough to be fantasy relevant, but you don't think 7 touches a game from McLaughlin, and that really does bring down the pie a little bit.
McLaughlin was a Sean Payton guy. And certainly his rookie year, there was a little bit of steam. Last year, he had opportunities and just wasn't very good with it. So,
but good, you don't think he was good at all? Like, I thought he was good enough to still like have a role. He's not just a pure backup. He's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right on that one. I don't know if they'll go 3-headed. They were 3-headed in 2023, where multiple backs worked in. It was McLaughlin, P. Ryan, and Javonte Williams when he was there. So they worked in 3 backs in 2023, but I think that was sort of out of necessity.
Yeah,
usually Sean Payton offense has been 2 backs.
Well, I heard Scott Pianowski on his Breakfast Table podcast point out that the 3-person backfield, 3-man backfield that Saints deployed one time that was bad. It was, let me see, it was Ingram, it was Pierre Thomas, and it was Sproles. And that feels a little bit like what we have here.
Yeah, but I don't think that McLaughlin has the same kind of juice as any of those 3. I think those 3 played together because like Pierre Thomas was really, really good at the time. Ingram was really, really good. And Darren Sproles was Darren Sproles. No matter where he went, he was getting targets and touches because he was so good. McLaughlin is no Darren Sproles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. You know what? It's I think this is J.K. Dobbins messed this whole thing up. I mean, that's really what we're at here. Like something could hit, but there's a lot more ambiguity now, right? Like, yeah. So
no, I think it's like if you're not in on Harvey, then take Dobbins. If you're not in on Dobbins, take Harvey. And I think that if you're a best ball player, just take both of them because I think this offense is going to score. And these two players are both in a situation where they could pay off at ADP. Neither one is going that high that it's like too bad of a pick right now.
Yeah. What's the downside, the red flags that you see with both of the first round rookie tight ends, Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren? Let's take them together.
Yeah, I think that the it's for Colston Loveland, it's the target share, and it's Luther Burden stepping in as like a slot role, Rome Odunze and DJ Moore playing on the outside, and them being very, very wide receiver centric. And Loveland's also a younger player where, maybe it's he's going to be targeted in the middle of the field, but are they going to hyper target the wide receivers and the tight end becomes a little bit less? There's also a little bit of they have a plan where they can be in 12 personnel with Cole Kmet also mixing in. Cole Kmet doesn't really scare me, but Cole Kmet's really been a significant factor in the passing game in multiple seasons. So it's sort of and now this is not a like for like player comparison because I think Colston Loveland is far ahead of where Dalton Kincaid was drafted. Also, he went significantly higher in the NFL draft than where Dalton Kincaid was drafted. But I think at the time, we, including myself, made mistakes of thinking that Dawson Knox was going to get phased out. He doesn't get phased out, and then it's sort of another tight end mouth to feed. So really the argument against Loveland's an easy one. It's target competition. Wide receivers, all three of those guys are good players, and Burden's really, really the one, because if Burden mixes in and becomes an instant fantasy contributor, slot wide receiver, then that takes away some of those easy button looks for Colston Loveland. So Loveland's sort of an easy argument, even though it's a bet on talent situation where I can get that sort of talent in tight end 2 prices. Tyler Warren, Tyler Warren one is more nuanced because I think on paper, Tyler Warren is getting drafted highly for a reason. He's going like side by side with like a guy like David Njoku.
He's tight end 11 in redraft.
Tight end 11, which is, and Tyler Warren, there's a few things where if it's Anthony Richardson starting, do we see the passing volume be lower? If it's Anthony Richardson starting, does the potential Taysom Hill usage where we see Tyler Warren getting some carries inside of the 5-yard line, just enough as a runner where it's like super exciting for us as fantasy managers, where the upside argument for Tyler Warren is he's a north of 20% target share player, right around 20% target share. And he also gets like those really fun rushing opportunities, maybe runs for 4 touchdowns this year.
Pause there for a second because I want to ask you about this. You said you were down on JT. Is this the reason? Because Warren has potential goal line rushing ability?
I'm not down on JT. I think JT makes sense as a structural draft pick if I went with like a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson in the first round.
But stick with this point here, though. Do you think that Warren potential to have 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns? I mean, that's got to come out of JT's pocket.
For sure. I think that if Warren ends up being a little bit more Taysom Hill and they want to utilize him in that role,
that's interesting.
If Jonathan Taylor loses 4 or 5 rushing scores there, then that 100% hurts Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get a lot of rushing opportunities regardless, but it's a touchdown argument.
Right, but that's the difference between 14 touchdowns and 9, which that's a big deal in fantasy football.
Huge.
Yeah.
So Tyler Warren is a range of outcomes guy where and he's one where next week I'm doing a podcast with Scott Barrett and Brett Whitefield where we're going to discuss the players that we have our eye on in training camp. And Tyler Warren's really one of them. Because I want to see it. Do they use him in this Taysom Hill type role? And it doesn't even have to be Taysom Hill role. It could be half of what we saw with Taysom Hill. It could be a third of what we saw with Taysom Hill. But a tight end who with that sort of draft capital, that sort of college production, and a 20% target share that can give me 4 rushing touchdowns, it's huge.
Yeah. No, those are good takes. And then obviously the other red flags are we forget because we've been spoiled by Bowers, but go back to Trey McBride. Sometimes tight ends just do not fire their rookie year, right? Sam Laporta, for all the great rookie year he had, it was mostly touchdowns, right? That drove him up. I think he had very similar yardage to Dalton Kincaid, who nobody likes.
But Laporta had 120 targets as a rookie.
Okay.
So like Laporta, like people go back with the Laporta rookie year, and a lot of people like to poke holes and say the points per game were not a usual tight end one overall, but 120 target rookie year. Good. I mean, that's 120 good. Targets for tight ends. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Laporta is a very solid pick. I mean, he's in the top 5 of most redraft rankings. For sure. He's the one where like, he's almost like the equivalent of like Baker Mayfield in the tight end position, where he's not in that first tier anymore, and then there's a drop, and then you have to take him as the next guy. Cause I'm still considering Kittle, even though he's going in the 4th, like he's not going to get out of Kittle himself. It won't get out of the 3rd round. And I'm not talking about premium scoring, just in standard PPR. Yeah, he won't get out of the 3rd round eventually.
Kittle's almost like a tier of his own. Yes. And then you also have Laporta in a tier of his own.
Kittle's probably should be the bottom of the Bowers McBride tier.
Yeah, I think that the Kittle could end up being a 17 point per game player at the tight end position this year.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the overall target ceiling of the 2 younger tight ends.
Doesn't need it. Doesn't need it.
He's super efficient.
Doesn't need it. It's like, it's just like that yak stuff. I mean, anytime, like if you heard there was like a 70-yard touchdown from San Francisco just had right away. I'm like, oh, was it Kittle? Like that's my first thought in my head.
Kittle's an absolute monster. Laporta's interesting though this year, like just not to get off topic, because Laporta, it seems like an overcorrection by the community. I drafted him in a couple Dynasty startups this offseason where last year in like FFPC startups, he was a 2nd round pick. Now you're able to get him in like the 5th round. And people are scared of the target competition, but Laporta's the type of tight end where if you have him on your Dynasty roster, you're set at tight end for the conceivable future. And he's already shown us he's got 120 target type outcome in him and a tight end 1 overall outcome in him. And he's sort of it's not left for dead's not the right word, but people are way less enthusiastic about him because of the big 2 tight ends, McBride and Bowers, and now you have Warren and Loveland coming in. So I think Laporta, I would kick the tires on a few Laporta trades as well in Dynasty.
I just got a text from our president, Peter Shanky. He said, if you mention FFPC again, you're never allowed back on the podcast. So it's just what he told me.
Just edit it out in the post-production.
We actually love the FFPC. I play in a lot of their contests, but again,
I love that. And I'll say NFFC RotoWire Online Championship. I had a 2019. I was number 1 in the overall, like the combined standings, where it was the highest RotoWire Online Championship and the highest NFFC Classic. So I was number 1 that year. So that was that was a nice little payday.
Theo, we're going to give people some downside on Burden and Golden to finish out. But before that, what's the most important piece of content that you're working on right now, whether it's audio, video, or written, that you want people to pay attention to?
Yeah, so I know you have a big YouTube audience over at RotoWire. I'm really proud of the momentum and the views that we've had on YouTube recently. Fantasy Points, a lot of people are listening to the podcast. I think that the YouTube channel's really grown a lot. So I would.
Why do you think it's growing? What are you guys doing over there that's growing?
Putting out high quality content. You came on and had a really big video. People love the Alan Seslowsky one.
They like us together for some reason.
They like us together. We got good rapport here. So we had a really big hit last year on this channel, and then over on the Fantasy Points channel. I would say if you want to show some support for my content, follow Fantasy Points YouTube. And if you're watching this on RotoWire YouTube, all you got to do is just go and subscribe to another channel.
Yeah, screw support. I'm talking about like if you want listen, I'm not, I'm friends with Theo, but I'm also a Theo fan. I've always been since before I knew him. And you follow him at OG Fantasy on X. But I watch your video. Your videos are always on rotation, when I'm in the shower. Theo, can you picture that? Me in the shower. I have this device now that like you could put your phone. It's a waterproof, like see-through screen.
Great. That's great.
So, when you're soaking in the hot water, you don't feel like getting out. I watch YouTube videos and you're in the shower with me while I'm scrubbing.
That's a great invention. I didn't know that. I'm going to get on Amazon and get one of those.
It's great. My shower. It suctions right to the wall. You put your device in, and you could. It has like the see-through like glass. It's not glass. It's like this plexiglass. You could touch the screen, and it's sensitive to your touch while your hands are water and soap.
There you go. That's so you get even more screen time throughout the day.
So you're staring at me while I'm showering is what I'm saying.
That's right. Yeah, so I'd say
Nothing to say
fantasy points YouTube, podcast wise, Dynasty Life podcast every single week. Fantasy Football Daily is the big one. I'm dropping multiple episodes a week of Fantasy Football Daily. Alan, you were on that one. Jim Coventry was on that one. So Fantasy Football Daily has been sort of the most frequent, but Dynasty Life is pure Dynasty. And then I do School of Scott with Scott Barrett every single week. And this time of year, we're dropping 2 some weeks. And that one, we did our positional breakdowns. And it's Scott and I. We had JJ Zachariason for quarterbacks. We had Pat Kerrane for running backs. And then we're going to do a tight end episode and a wide receiver episode in the next couple of weeks. So all 3 of those podcasts, all on different feeds. And my written work, my rankings are all at Fantasy Points.
Cool.
My next article coming out is a 0 RB and hero RB target list, players that are targets and values for fantasy managers going with that. So I know, Alan, you're a big 0 RB guy.
I know
you're not.
No. I hear you. Right. You actually, you know what? For the last 10 minutes, let's talk strategy. All right. We gave everyone enough red flags. You know, we that was just kind of a fun exercise. We're going to draft all these rookies. We love them. You know, so everything we just said, forget it. So let's talk redraft, dynasty, whatever it is, strategy for 2025. What do you think it is this year? Is it 0 RB? Is it go heavy on the RB? I'm just talking about a 1 QB PPR league that everyone's going to play at home, not with the professionals, not best ball. What do you think is the right way to do it this year?
Well, I don't think you need to pigeonhole yourself into a strategy. I think that's one really big mistake I think people make is don't go into your draft saying I'm going to be 0 RB, I'm going to be hero RB, I'm going to be robust RB. Sort of let it come to you. This year, I think that there's multiple edges to be found where you get sort of a very flat tier from like maybe the 111 to like the 209. So I think that really when you get those late first round picks, I think you walk away with a really, really strong build this year. I think it's be sort of open-minded to multiple builds this year and just sap up value when it's presented to you. This year, you have an opportunity to kind of be choose your own destiny. There's great wide receiver value in round 1. There's great wide receiver value in round 2. There's also the same thing with running back. So you can open your draft multiple ways. I do think that just fundamentally, if you start running back, you really want to embrace that round 3 wide receiver because it does start to dry up a little bit once you get past those guys. So I think know where the tier breaks are for wide receiver.
Well, let me ask you this, because I agree with what you just said about the dry up there, and then we have a great question from our guy Mike Q. That's why I've been starting like in the top 3 or 4 picks, even though I want to take Bijan and I want to take like running back there. I've been obviously 101. I'm taking Chase, but I'm pushing Jefferson and Lamb up there, and then whatever your wide receivers that you like, not because I think they're better than Bijan, but because the 2-3 turn, I really like the running backs there. I like getting Kyron and Chase Brown, or I like Breece Hall there. I know the market doesn't like him there, but that's what I'm saying. So if you go start wide receiver, if you have a top 3 or 4 pick, there really is a 2 running backs there that are should be like late first round picks.
Yeah, I think that's going with that strategy is fine.
Yeah.
I think you can find your anchor RB in round 2. I like Chase Brown a lot in round 3. I think he's a really, really good bet to make right now.
He's moving up though. He's moving up.
Yeah, he's moving up. But I think Chase Brown, a lot of times you get him in that
303,
305.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's really the safety that you have in round 2 now, where it's Achane, it's Henry, and then end of the second round, sort of the fail-safe volume play in JT. So you have multiple options in round 2 to go with your wide receiver approach in round 1. So I think that's perfectly fine way about going. I think also you want to have a quarterback plan this year because know sort of your format, know when a lot of leagues now, what draft selection you have is. And I think that's a great way for a lot of home leagues. People know their draft pick slot like a couple weeks before. I think that makes drafts a lot better where drafters show up like very, very organized. We have that in the NFFC, Alan, where NFFC we get a couple days before we'll know our draft slot. I think that's great. And I think this year, especially with sort of the huge tier breaks at quarterback and the sort of the massive the massive tier of quarterbacks sort of from quarterback 8 to like quarterback 15, where there's a bunch of appealing names, sort of know the round where you know you're going to have to get your guy and maybe flag plant 2 or 3 quarterbacks you're very comfortable drafting if you don't take that one of the quarterbacks in the big 5. I think that'll help your overall draft strategy, just to know this is what I'm planning on doing at quarterback. I know that I'm going to wait and see where my draft, whoever takes, when we see QB1 drafted, we know QB2 and QB3 are going to get drafted. It's usually Daniels as a QB3.
So your hot take is that 2 and 3 come after 1?
There you go. That's not necessarily a hot take, but
yeah,
it's have a quarterback plan this year.
No, I like that.
Have a tight end plan this year,
and have a backup plan, because
have a backup plan.
You could say, hey, I want a top 4 quarterback, and they just go. And then you're like, I don't want to take Pat Mahomes next. I don't want to take Joe Burrow next, right? So yeah, I like that. It's Justin Fields is my life preserver. I'll push him up if I need to. Hey, Theo, we got a great question. By the way, thank you for that. That's actually really, I think that it lines up with what I think my strategy is going to be. A little different, but for the most part, you are making sense. Generous super chat from our friend Mike Q. It's a dynasty question, I'm assuming here. So let's help him out, Theo. Right? I'll give you half of this. Right? Can you get us? I mean, this is
$2.50 on Venmo. I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, minus YouTube takes 30% of this. So
I have to pay the 30%. No.
YouTube takes 30%.
RotoWire, that comes off for RotoWire send.
Well, we'll split it 15% each.
Fine.
Yeah, that's fair, right? Okay. So super flex 10 by 10, 3 wide receivers in a PPR league, right? So here's the trade that is being proposed. Trade Henry. I'm assuming that's Derrick Henry, right? You think so, right? Derrick Henry for McBride. Go ahead.
This is. I think this might. If it's Dynasty.
Yeah, this is Dynasty.
Henry for McBride is an all day, every day. Yeah, right. You're picking McBride.
Or the second option is Henry London for Kittle and Achane. And then you see that the players that he has there already are Neighbors, Pickens, J-Mo, Judkins. Who is that one say? Hungry?
I don't know.
Pitts. All right, let's just take these one at a time. Henry for McBride's an easy, doesn't matter. I don't care if it's half.
I don't
PPR.
care what format it is.
Right, half, 0 McBride. PPR, standard. I want McBride, right.
Yeah, McBride.
London for, Henry and London for Kittle. No, we want the Henry and London side.
Yeah, I think that the Henry and London side there, I'm going to go with. I love Devon Achane.
Yeah,
but betting on a running, I think London has a longer shelf life there. It's an interesting one, and I don't think that there's a tight end premium here that would be sort of the driver, but I would lean towards the London side, even though I love Achane.
All right, very good. Oh, instead of Hungry, he said he meant Jeanty. So that was.
Oh, you got a loaded team too.
Yeah.
You've got absolutely loaded team.
Yep. What's the most mispronounced name you've seen in podcasts this offseason? Because last year it was Achane. Is there anyone mispronouncing names?
No, I haven't really. There hasn't been a name that really jumps out at me.
A podcaster who I love keeps calling Jamar Gibbs, so I want to scream at them, even though it's like,
God, that's awful.
I think it's just a slip, like Jamar Chase, Jamar Gibbs, but I don't want to call him out. But I'm gonna yell at him.
People get very angry in chats of those that I'm on about how I pronounce Oregon.
Yeah, I was gonna yell at you when you said it. It's Oregon.
So give a shout out to Billy Muzio, who I podcasted with for years at Player Profiler, and he was from there, and he would always get on. It's like Oregon. They want me to say it, and I'm like, I kind of say it phonetically, and then
just people
get so angry about it in the YouTube chat. Oregonians do not like the way I say it.
Is Billy from there, or he lives there?
No, he lives in Bend. Which is their home of the Ducks. I'm not even gonna say the state name, but he's from the Bay Area originally. He's a NorCal guy.
All right, Theo, you did it again. You're continue to be one of our best guests and one of our most requested guests, Eric Vanek. Eric over at South Harmon. For some reason, he must be doing it himself, but he gets a lot of requests, and then obviously we always get requests for Shane, for Scott, for you. I mean, the one person who I love, who they tell us not to have on, is Matt Kelly, who you used to work for him. I love Matt Kelly, and people always tell us don't have him on. So you know what? I cannot do that. I love the Podfather. We're going to have him on, but people always tell us he takes heat in your comments too. Like people hate him in the comments.
Lightning rod guy.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing though. He knows.
But that was a fun time, Alan. We had Alan and I, we podcasted together. It was the two of us with Matt. We had that going for about a year. That was a lot of fun because I got to talk to Alan every single week like we're doing now. So now I talk to you on the phone.
Yep. No, you're doing a great job, Theo. And again, you follow him on X at the OG Fantasy. I'm at Alan Seslowsky. And Theo, just a reminder to anyone that's watching this live that Jim and I are going to be back on SiriusXM Radio. If you have that in your car on an app, starting July 13th, 2 to 4 p.m. every Sunday. We'll be there talking fantasy football. So if you like SiriusXM, we'll be back there. And also, I'm making my first appearance at the Fantasy Football Expo this year, Theo. So I'll be down there. So if anyone's down there, I'm doing some radio shows down there as well. If anyone's down there, please say hello. I wanna meet anyone that comes on these streams and I'm just looking forward to meeting some people that I haven't met in person. It's funny. I always think like you and I have met in person, but I know we haven't. But
it's weird. It's a really weird dynamic.
Would you give me a hug when I met you? It would be a hug situation, right?
I would dab you out. I would go for it would be but I would a variation of a hug. But the expo,
some variation of.
Yeah,
I want a full embrace.
Yeah, you want a full on two arm hug.
Yeah, like back crack type of thing.
That's fine. I'll lift
me up.
I'll lift you up. Yeah, that's it. I'll be like Roger Goodell and you're getting drafted.
Yeah, that's it. That's the visual. All right, we'll end it there, everybody. We'll be back next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.